Good evening, all. Sorry I haven't posted a video for a while, but I've been busy with various projects, reading, writing, and just taking care of daily business. Um, I've been wanting to do a review for quite a while of the failed spin-off of Babylon 5, which is, of course, Crusade from 1999. I've seen a lot of videos lately, about, does it suck, quote unquote, and, was it really bad? I don't think it really did, but it has to be taken in context with what happened to it, and that is that it was canceled basically before it even aired. Straczynski had this idea between the end of season 5 of Babylon 5 and the movie which preceded this, which is called Babylon 5: A Call to Arms, which I also rewatched. And the idea was that it was actually mentioned in, I believe it was The Fall of Centauri Prime, when Londo uh, tells Mr. Morton after he uh, does his little trick where he wants to speak to Mr. Morton. He has his two guards kill the shadows that are standing right next to him. Says, "I guess I'll have to have that reupholstered." Which I thought was funny. And then he says, we know that the Vorlons are sending these planet killers to destroy anywhere that the shadows have had influence. We know that the shadows asked to use our island of Selene as a base for their ships. And he says, well, yes, that's true. He says, starts going on about, how powerful they are. He says, yes, yes, Mr. Morton, I understand. In space or in the air, your ships are very impressive, but right now they're on the ground. He says, yes, they're on the ground, but they can sense things from miles away. So what are you going to do? Blow up the island? He says, as a matter of fact, Mr. Morton, now that you mention it, he picks up a button and he presses it, and the island blows up. He had nuclear weapons installed on the island and destroys the shadow vessels. Morton goes into a rage. He says, even if the shadows lose, they have allies, and they'll make sure Centauri Prime pays the price for what you did here today. And of course, Londo says, what I have done, oh, Mr. Morton, I have not begun with you yet. Of course, it follows up that he has Mr. Morton executed. And just as Veer predicted in an earlier episode, Morton asked Veer, what do you want? You've never told me what you want. He says, I would like to live just long enough to see your head cut off and put on a pike as a warning to the next 10 generations that some favors come at too high a price. I would look up at your dead eyes and wave like this. And Morton just kind of walks out and he says, oh, Mr. Morton. Morton turns around and he goes, again, which I thought was very funny. And then later in that episode, Londo says to Veer, go out in the garden. This is something I think you'd like to see. He walks out into the garden. And there's Mr. Morton's head on a pike. And again, he looks up at him and he just goes, smiles, which I thought was very funny. But he planted that idea that the shadows had allies, and the allies are out for revenge. And that's what happens in both the movie Babylon 5: A Call to Arms and Crusade, the series. I'm not going to reprise the movie for anybody who hasn't seen it, because again, it's good and you should see it. It's worth watching. But basically, the Drakh have found a shadow planet killer, and they're going to take it to Earth, destroy Earth with it, because they're pissed off that the humans, mainly in the Interstellar Alliance, led the fight against the Shadows, and they also destroyed Zahadum, which was their home as well as the Shadows' home. So they're going to take this shadow planet killer to Earth with the help of two new, very special, very fast destroyers, Victory and Excalibur. Captain Sheridan intercepts the Drakh fleet and manages to destroy the shadow planet killer, though the captain of the Victory commits suicide, basically. He does a raid on the shadow killer and destroys it. And then, because the Drakh ships are kind of inside this cloud that contains the shadow killer, they're all destroyed as well. But before they leave, they infect the Earth with a plague. And the plague is a biological plague, and it will adapt within 5 years. They didn't have time to reprogram it for human DNA. So it's going to take 5 years to figure out our DNA, and then it's going to wipe out every man, woman, and child on Earth if a cure is not found within that time. That's the premise for Crusade. Crusade stars Gary Cole as Captain Matthew Gideon. Daniel Dae Kim as his first officer, Lieutenant Matheson, who is a telepath, and there are some new rules for telepaths that he's governed by. Psychor is gone. There was a telepath war, and Psychor and a bunch of rogue telepaths fought each other, and the rogue telepaths won, basically. Though it's hinted that Bester escaped. He was not killed in the attack on Psychor headquarters, which was nuclear, by the way. But his also a character from the movie, Dorina Nafil, is a thief, member of the Thieves Guild. Her race is not known, but her planet was also wiped out by a shadow planet killer, and she kind of blames Sheridan for that he didn't step in and do more to stop it. Though it was actually the Drakh who ordered her planet destroyed, and she finds out later. Galen, who is played by Peter Woodward. Dorina is played by Carrie Dobro. Peter Woodward is the son of British actor Edward Woodward, who appears in another episode. People may know him as The Equalizer, and he was also in, of course, the great movie, slipping my mind now, The Wicker Man, of course, with Christopher Lee and Britt Eklund, and many others as well. But the other characters, Peter Woodward plays Galen, who is a techno-mage, and that in itself is interesting. Marjean Holden plays Dr. Sarah Chambers, who is the chief medical officer, and Max Allan Brooks plays a character called Max Eilerson. I think that name is actually a little bit of a joke on Harlan Ellison, who was, of course, a great friend of J. Michael Straczynski's and his mentor. And he became Ellison's executor, actually, of his will. He works for IPX, Interplanetary Explorations, and he's kind of a corporate jerky. He's always like looking for money and looking for ways to make money, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense given that the Earth only has 5 years to live. You'd think he'd be interested in finding this cure too, more than in making a profit, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense given the circumstances. But those are the principal characters, and it tells the story of after the events of A Call to Arms. Matthew Gideon is assigned as captain of the Excalibur, which is the surviving ship as Victory was destroyed, and the shipyard that built them was destroyed too, so they can't build any more of these destroyers. So Excalibur is it. Obviously, given the name, and also because of certain factors, primarily the way that Galen behaves and certain things that he says, there's a big kind of King Arthur vibe to this, which kind of dates back to something that happened earlier in a late delivery from Avalon, which was an episode with Michael York. Michael York was actually the soldier on the Earth ship that attacked the Black Star, the Minbari, or not the Black, though actually I think it was called the White Star, Ducat's ship, and led to Ducat's death, but it was an accident. They approached with their gun ports open, which in Minbari meant was a sign of respect, but Earth people didn't know that. They thought they were getting ready to fire. So the captain of that ship ordered his first officer, or his weapons officer, to fire. The weapons officer was this character played by Michael York, but he develops a delusion that he's King Arthur and that he's come back and he needs to find Excalibur, and that's kind of an interesting thing. There's a funny thing between him and Jakar. Anyway, that doesn't really have a lot to do with Crusade, but Crusade, again, it opens with a sword. The ship is called Excalibur. Galen acts and says a lot, acts kind of like Merlin, and he says things like, expect me when you see me, which is something that Nicola Williamson said as Merlin in John Boorman's film Excalibur, which is probably the best King Arthur movie ever made, in my humble opinion. A fantastic movie. If you have not seen it, do so. It covers everything from Uther and Igraine all the way to Arthur being led away on the ship to go to Avalon. So we have this series that was conceived as, again, a 5-year story arc, because there are 5 years that they have to find the Drakh plague before it adapts and kills everybody on Earth. Unfortunately, Straczynski had to pitch the network that he sold Babylon 5 to, P10, Primetime Entertainment Network, closed down. It went bankrupt. And so he had to deal with TNT. And TNT started interfering. They wanted to do things differently. They didn't like some of his ideas, and he started getting pissed off. And they wanted basically to take over creative control, and he wouldn't do it. So they said, fine, your series is canceled. And 13 episodes have been filmed. They only actually aired 11 of them, and the other three were only available. Two were only available on DVD and Blu-ray. Well, I don't think it was ever released on Blu-ray. I believe it has been now on some Vorlon 5 collections. Galen had appeared in the movie A Call to Arms, and he appeared to the three principal characters, John Sheridan, Doreen Nafeel, and Captain Roberts is played by Tony Todd, and they formed this alliance to take down the Drakh and stop the Shadow Planet, stop them from using the Shadow Planet killer. The principle, it seems like, it was a fairly straightforward idea. Unfortunately, the way it was shot, and I think this has to be looked at in perspective. Some of these episodes had nothing to do with finding the Drakh plague. They had to do with the technomages and why they left, and why Galen was sort of an outcast, and because he decided to stay behind. He considered them moral cowards and didn't go along with them. He also rescued Matthew Gideon from a situation where his ship, the IAS Cerberus, was destroyed by a hybrid shadow vessel. And no one would believe him. They said it was destroyed in a jump gate accident when its jump engines failed, but that's not really what happened. And only Galen can kind of prove that, because he was there and he rescued him. Because as the Technomage fleet was going by, they heard his distress signal, and nobody would turn back to save him except Galen. And Galen did save him and dropped him off at a base. And again, people didn't accept his story. So like I said, some of these episodes did not have anything to do with finding the cure for the Drakh plague, but I think that's because they were setting up certain things that would have paid off later on in the seasons had they gone on. One was a subplot about something called the Apocalypse Box, which is a strange device that Gideon won in a poker game. He's apparently a card cheat. That's something that they established, or card sharp, or I should say more properly. Not necessarily a cheat, but he knows how to do things like, palm cards and things like that, and manipulate the odds somewhat. And he won this thing, and the person who he won it for says, thank God, I'd say I'm free of it. And he dies. He shoots himself in the head with a PPG and says, you don't understand, I'm free of it now. And he says, it tells him before he dies, it lies. Not always, but just enough. And then he doesn't finish the sentence. So this weird alien device is literally a box, the yellow and with black bands, and it glows. And it literally speaks to him, tells him things, tells him what planet to go to next for his search to find the cure to the Drakh plague. And it sometimes leads him into dangerous situations. And on another couple of times, it actually gives him something that they can actually use. Like on one planet, they find an alloy of some sort that is a kind of a nano alloy that allows him to create a mask, which, if worn, will prevent the wearer from catching the Drakh plague, which is airborne. And while it won't prevent, it's not a cure; it's a preventative. So that's something that the Apocalypse Box led him to in one of the episodes, and that was helpful. But other things that happen aren't, and it's just kind of a mishmash. Unfortunately, like I said, because it was canceled so soon, because it was canceled before even the end of the first season, it didn't really get a chance to play out some of these ideas that Straczynski created. And one of them, again, was going more in depth about the telepath war, which we would have seen through Matheson's eyes. It turns out Matheson was on Mars when the Psychor was attacked by the rogue telepath, so he saw what happened and saw the destruction of Psychor, basically. We would have learned more about that had the season gone on. Let me go through the episodes for you, just briefly. I'm not going to go into too much detail, so I'm not going to really spoil anything, though. It's probable that you won't see these anyway. But if you do, the first is called War Zone, which just deals with the Drakh plague and what happens on Earth. Earth goes into a panic, and there are all these death cults, and they Gideon and the Excalibur are faced with attacks by the Drakh, and the plot basically is put into place. The second one is called The Long Road, and this one, again, is one that doesn't have to do with searching for the Drakh plague, and I think it kind of goes off the beam. I believe this one was actually written by Peter David, not by Michael Straczynski, and there's a colony of Earth miners who are being bothered by a dragon, as it were, and somehow Galen kind of gloms onto the fact that this is the signature of one of his fellow technomages, who turns out to be Edward Woodward, as a technomage named Arwen. And he's established sort of a little paradise on this planet, which is pre-technological. They don't have they don't have sophisticated weapons or computers or anything. They're kind of like farmers, basically, but they're miners, and the miners resent the arrival of the people from Excalibur, because they don't want contact with high-tech people. And they take a couple of them hostage, and this causes a kind of a bit of a crisis between Galen and Arwen, and also the Excalibur crew and the miners, which is resolved peacefully. That's where they find the virus that can help, that Dr. Chambers can uses to make these breather devices to prevent the spread of the Drakh plague. The third was actually a very interesting Galen episode. It's called The Well of Forever, in which Galen tells them that there's a strange thing in hyperspace that his race, the Technomages, knew as the Well of Forever, and that it contains a lot of records and history, and that maybe there's something in there about how they can find a cure. He's actually lying. That's not why he went there, and that's not why he drew Gideon into this quest. He had fallen in love with a female technomage named Isabella, and promised that after she died, not from a plague, but from during a battle of some sort, that he would take her there, her remains there. And that's what this place is. It's a sort of a graveyard for technomages, and contains a lot of their graves. And he just did it to keep a promise. Gideon's very upset, and he says, you lied to me, and I don't know if I can trust you anymore. And he says, well, you'd understand I had to do it. It was an obligation. Galen takes obligations very seriously, which is something that we learn. The fourth episode is called The Path of Sorrows. This, again, is a good one. This one was well written. This, I believe, was written by Straczynski. There's on a strange planet, the crew of the Excalibur, with the help principally of Max Iverson, who's an expert at languages amongst her. He's an archaeologist and also an expert at languages, and he deciphers this language that says over and over again, enter through the path of sorrows. Nobody knows what that means. And Galen suddenly starts insulting Darina and saying that she led somebody to their death, and that she starts crying. And all of a sudden, he takes one of her tears and wipes it on this door, and opens the path of sorrows. And inside, they find this strange alien creature inside like a bubble, and they take it back on the Excalibur, and three people, Gideon, Darina, and Matheson, all have direct contact with this creature, and it communicates in English, though it doesn't speak. The words are sort of spelled out, which I thought was interesting. It can read their minds, basically, and it takes them each through one of their experiences. It goes through the experience with Gideon of his being stranded from the Cerberus and what happened to the Cerberus. And the end of that, reliving that through him, it says, I forgive you. And he just shakes his head and leaves. What do you mean you forgive me? Then Matheson, it takes him through the attack on Psychor, and him being approached by one of these rogue telepaths who he sympathizes with. And what that leads to basically leads to the destruction of Psychor because he lets her go. And again, at the end, he says, "I forgive you." Uh, with Galen, it takes him through what happened with Isabella. And Galen is very angry. At the end, he says, "Who are you to forgive people? You don't have any right to, do this to people." He says, "They don't deserve this." You know, he says, "I forgive them before they die." He says, "They don't deserve to die, but you do." And you see that he's going to kill him. He's got this device that's sort of magical. That the technomages use science to approximate magic, and it appears that he's going to kill him. And Gideon holds him back and says, "No, no, don't do it. It's not worth it. Just put him back on the planet." And that's what they do. They don't really gain very much from that episode, but it was kind of an interesting one. The next one, Patterns of the Soul, is sort of odd. They they go onto this strange planet, and they find an exiled kind of a colony. And the people on the colony are Darina's people. They all look like Darina. They have yellow eyes, which she has, and they dress similarly. And they're obviously her people came from a planet called Xander Prime. Xander Prime was destroyed with a shadow planet killer. And she has to tell them this because they're an isolated colony. They don't know. But it turns out they are infected with the Drakh plague, or something like the Drakh plague. And the Drakh plague kills her kind in 2 years rather than 5. So they are all basically doomed to die, which is rather awful. But that's kind of an interesting episode as well. Ruling from the Tomb is about Mars, and this, again, it's one that it could have advanced the thing about the Drakh plague, but it instead, what it does, there's this conference, medical conference on Mars of doctors who are looking for the medical experts are looking for the cure, but amongst them are some religious zealots. And the religious zealots are from this doomsday cult called Sacred Omega that believe that the plague was a judgment from God and that mankind is meant to be wiped out, and they want to help them along. They're going to blow up the conference and kill everybody. And through the help of one of his officers who was once a member of Sacred Omega, Gideon manages to stop this plot through a rather clever trick that he pulls, which I won't spoil for anybody. But again, a good episode, but not directly related to the central plot. Rules of the game. It develops that there's kind of a little bit of a romance developing between Gideon and Captain Elizabeth Lockley of Babylon 5, who is still in command of Babylon 5 as she was in season 5. And there's little plots, hints and things with that in this episode. And also, Max Irison's ex-wife is being harassed by money lenders, and they're threatening to kill her, and he has to figure out what to do, and that's kind of interesting. Appearances and Other Deceased is a really creepy, very scary episode. The Excalibur encounters an alien ship where everybody is dead except for one crew member, and meanwhile there's a very funny subplot. Unfortunately, there's some bad gay stereotypes in this, and I wasn't pleased with that. There's a kind of a mincing character who's also black, and I think that was a little bit gratuitous, who doesn't like the design of the Excalibur, their uniforms or anything, and he's like being kind of a bitchy gay person. It's like, oh, it's too loud, it's too bright, it should be this, it should be that. And I really didn't like the fact that he was presented in that manner, because I think that's the stereotypes that really are rather, in this, they're used negatively. Not necessarily to say that nobody acts like that or nobody talks like that, but I didn't think it was really appropriate for this episode. But anyway, they find out that there's only one of these aliens left alive, and they put him in isolation in the med lab. And then he appears to be having a physical crisis. And one of the doctors, Chambers, says, "No, don't go in there." But one of her other doctors under her thinks that this alien is dying, and she goes into the ISO lab and opens the cryotube that this alien's been being held in, and it touches her and spreads some sort of a disease that is spread by touch, and it turns out the disease is the alien. The creature was not the alien. The creature was a being that the alien was inhabiting. The alien is non-corporeal, and it survives by using host bodies. It's a symbiont, and it uses a bunch of people touch each other, and they're all infected, and they have to figure out how to get this thing off the ship, and they use a rather clever device to do that. And again, I won't spoil that, but very, very scary, creepy episode. Good psychological horror, basically. Racing the Night is a very interesting episode. It's a little bit sick, actually, but it's about a Gideon and Galen and Dorina and everybody, Eilerson, go down to a planet that is very modern, and there seems to be like this big city, but the city's unoccupied, and the buildings are intact. There's some intact technology, and all of a sudden, one of the crew is killed and eviscerated. The beam just slices them in half, and all of a sudden, things start like happening. People start dying, rather gruesomely, all in different manners. One has his head bashed in, another one's throat's cut, another's strangled, and they don't understand what's going on. It turns out that there's some sort of a nanotech virus on this planet that is causing these people to behave this way. And Galen figures out that this is being caused by, of all things, the planet has sort of a defense, and there is one living member of this alien race who also faced something like the Drakh. Actually, I think they faced the Drakh plague or something like the Drakh plague that was wiping them out. What they do is anytime another alien lands on their planet, they allow them to land. Then they examine them. They literally eviscerate a couple of them and kill them and study them to see if they have the virus or if they are immune to the virus. And there's one remaining being that communicates with them and lets them know that this has been going on for apparently 500 years. And they're just horrified that they're doing this, and they have to figure out a way to stop them. And they do. And again, I'm not going to spoil that. The Memory of War is very, very similar in that, again, there is a high technology planet that they discover, apparently having been led there by the Apocalypse Box, which you find at the end of the episode. And Galen tells them, don't go there. This is a bad place. It contains what the Romans refer to as genius loci, the spirit of the place. And that there's some places are good and some places are bad, and that this place is bad. Well, it's high tech. They have data crystals. They have things that can help them. There's a very cool scene. A lot of the graphics in this were not well done, and it must be commented on that what was released was probably not going to be the final version. They probably would have cleaned up some of these graphics had the series not been canceled and had they not been rushed into releasing these. But one scene that I thought was very well done, Dorita is sitting on top of a building. She's like 100, 200 stories up. She has no fear of heights, obviously, and discovers that there is basically a light bridge that extends between that building and another one, and she can walk across it. She has excellent balance. So they established that in earlier episodes, that she's very dexterous and also a great fighter. So she walks across this light bridge, and there's another building, and she sees a panel and opens it, and there's a data crystal inside. But once she takes the data crystal, it starts a timer, and the light bridge is starting to collapse. She has to run back across the building before it vanishes. That was really, really well done. I thought that special effect. Max Iverson is going to translate the data crystal and see if there's anything useful. Galen, meanwhile, finds out that people start dying and being killed, and they're being infected. Oh, this is the one I got that one confused with Racing the Night. People don't kill each other in Racing the Night. It's the aliens who are killing them. In this one is the one where they start killing each other for no apparent reason. Turns out that there's a nanovirus that's been entering their systems, and Galen identifies it as something that was created by a technomage. and he's disgusted. He has Dr. Chambers look at it, and he says, that was created by my people. And he goes down and confronts this. It's actually just the spirit of it. The real Technomage died, but it created this monstrous machine. Only Galen can destroy the machine, and he does this by hurling his staff at it, and his staff embeds itself in the machine and destroys it, and protects everybody, and they go back to the ship. Well, when he's back on the ship, he's mourning that he has lost his staff, saying that, Technomage's staff is basically the one thing he has that's his own, and now he's lost that, and he's very upset, and it's buried under miles and miles of rubble. There's no way to recover it. Well, in the last scene, you see Darina. She comes up, and she's covered in filth completely from head to toe, and is holding Galen's staff, which is also covered in filth, and she just hands it to him casually. I don't know if there were, again, I've heard conflicting things. There was sort of a bit of a hint that they were working on creating a romantic relationship between Galen and Darina, though they do not trust each other, and they say this multiple times in the series. She thinks he's holding out on her, and he's holding out secrets also on Gideon, which she doesn't like because she's come to trust Gideon, though she doesn't trust people very, very often. And so that was kind of an interesting scene. I thought, it must have been horrible for Carrie Dobro to get herself covered in mud, but she did that for the scene, and it was very convincing. I really enjoyed that, her handing him back the staff. The next one is kind of silly. It's basically an X-Files parody. It's called Visitors from Down the Street, in which Excalibur picks up a ship that is basically just a life pod, and there are two aliens on it who have tentacles instead of hair, but they're wearing suits that look like human suits, with suits and ties and white Oxford shirts and black shiny Oxford shoes, and they they think that Gideon and his crew are going to kill him. He said, well, why would you think that? He said, oh, don't tell me you're not part of it. He said, what are you part of what? They start putting forth this conspiracy theory that it's reversed. The aliens say that people from Earth have been coming to their planet for years. They show like a picture of a blimp that was taken. And he says, they haven't had these for hundreds of years. He says, and the incidents where like a human came down from a spaceship, they say it was 5 feet tall and had small eyes, but the government has denied that any of this happened. And he explains that they were investigating all these things, these supposed quote unquote sightings of human ships. He says they'd even make fun of the face on Mars thing, where they show him at first a picture of Mount Rushmore. And he says, one of our surveillance orbiting satellites took this photograph. And then, of course, when people demanded that they send it back to take another look, this is what they showed. And they show the Mount Rushmore with the faces completely wiped out. It's just a blur. And he says, of course that's real. That's Mount Rushmore on my planet, Earth. So, see, we told you. You people have been coming to our planet, for all these years. And he says, that's not true. For our records say we've never had any contact with your species before. He says, well, maybe your government's on it too, and they're keeping it from you. And it's the conspiracy that goes around and around in circles. Eventually, a spaceship from their planet shows up with another one of them, who is obviously a alien version of the cigarette smoking man, and it was played by William B. Davis in the X-Files, and he plays a character who is part of this government, and he eventually explains to they steal his weapon, which he brought on with him, and they can't figure out how he got it on board without it being triggering the weapon scanners. But they take him hostage, and they tell him, we want our ship recharged, and if we don't do it, we'll kill him. And they're holding him hostage, and so they go ahead and recharge their life pod, and they put them back on it, and they escape. And then Gideon asks this guy, I think his name is Marfan, says, why did you do this? Why did you do all this? He tells him, At one point, he had said something funny, which I think is, well, again, one of the aliens says, trust no one, which again is something Mulder used to say. And these characters are, one's male, one's female. They're one, the female has red hair, obviously, red tentacles. She's obviously supposed to be a Mulder, Scully type. And who didn't believe the other character at first, and Takir, I think his name is, and her name is Raina, and then eventually, came to believe him, just as Scully is very skeptical of Mulder, and finally comes to believe certain things anyway. Um, and the cigarette smoking man character, whose name I think is Marfan, tells Gideon, conspiracy theories serve, our purpose very well. Whenever, we've had a lot of wars on our planet, and uh, ever since we came up with this conspiracy, there's anytime something goes wrong, when there's an economic collapse or a budget crisis or something of this breaks out, we can blame the alien. Oh, it's those aliens. The aliens are in control, and now they have a scapegoat basically, and because they can't prove any of it, they use this to their convenience, and it has prevented civil wars from taking place. So they realize that Gideon realizes he's been being used basically, and in the end he does something interesting. He shows up at their home planet. He traces Marfan's ship back to their home planet, and sends down a bunch of probes which have all the which have that conversation that he told him, and also all the evidence that they've been looking for to prove that it's not a conspiracy, it's real. And now the people are going to know the truth, which I thought was interesting. There's also kind of a funny thing about there being a bad smell in the ship, and when you find out what it is, it's kind of disgusting, but it's kind of a funny joke. Obviously, Straczynski and Chris Carter were probably buddies, and they were like making fun of. He made fun of the show, but in a very interesting way. The last one is one of the most interesting. It's called Each Night I Dream of Home. And in this, a senator who is rather demanding, and his non-military attaché, David Williams, shows up on the ship, and they are demanding that they go on this very top secret mission. They're going back to Earth, and they have to go. They can't tell anybody. They can't discuss it, and they have to go right now. No stopping, no discussing it with anybody. Top secret, basically. And so Gideon is hesitant, but he decides he's going to go and do what he's told. And on the way, they pick up a distress beacon. The distress beacon is from Captain Lockley, who is stuck in a damaged Star Fury. In normal space, but she's been sending out a distress beacon, and nobody seems to be listening to her, or nobody can hear her. So they pick up the distress beacon, and against this senator's orders, Gideon decides he's going to pick her up, but he's not going to stop because he's told him don't stop. He says okay. So he just basically aims the Excalibur at her Star Fury and scoops her into the landing bay. And, that could have been disastrous, but it actually works. Recovers her, but again, he can't tell her anything because he's been ordered not to say anything. They pick up they go into Earth orbit. Earth has been quarantined. Nobody can leave. Any spaceship attempting to leave the Earth will be destroyed, again, to contain the Drakh plague. And a shuttle leaves and goes to the atmosphere, and then it's shot down, but it launches a survival pod. And inside that survival pod, there's somebody's in there. And they pick it up. They're ordered to pick it up. They're not told who it is. And then eventually, they put it into the med bay in extreme quarantine. And Dr. Chambers says, if we do anything more, we'll kill her inside. And they say, okay, that's fine. And inside this ISO bay where nothing can get out, it's completely sterilized. They open the pod, and inside is Dr. Stephen Franklin, played by Richard Biggs, who was still alive at the time. And they reveal that what they're going to do, in order to try to figure out the Drakh plague, because they don't really know what it is, they have to see it work. They have to see it infect somebody right from the beginning. And they've never had the ability to have this. So what they do is they're going to infect this guy, Mr. Williams, on purpose. And the reason that he's doing it, and this is interesting too, is before the Drakh plague happened, he fell in love with a woman. They were both miners on a mining planet, and they're supposed to get married in a week, and he wants to do it. He wants to get married, so he goes ahead and lets himself be infected on purpose, and they're going to track the infection and try to figure out what it is. Well, there are some things that go wrong, but eventually, he, against orders, he communicates with his girlfriend on Earth. He uses the senator's password to hack into EarthGov and EarthDome and sends a transmission and speaks to her briefly, which he wasn't supposed to do. Inadvertently, this alerts the Drakh, and the Drakh have listened to the conversation and they understand what he's trying to do. Well, they want to prevent this because they don't want anybody, figuring out the plague. And they send attack ships. And as Franklin is tracking the virus into this guy's system and starts to figure out what it is, the attack ships show up and they start, firing at the Excalibur. And there are so many of them that it's difficult. They have to launch fighters. And Lockley, who's been injured, is recovering, says, let me go out there with him. I know how to lead fighter squadrons. And he's reluctant, and Gideon's reluctant to do it, but he says, okay, go. And sends her, and it's a good thing he did because she figures out what he's doing. Their jump engines have been damaged, so they're going to ride the shockwave as the Drakh mothership goes back into hyperspace. All it was a carrier. It doesn't have weapons itself. So they do that, and the fighters follow them in, and then they destroy the mothership in hyperspace using their ship's main weapon, which is very cool. It collimates, I should say, all of this energy into one huge burst, but it leaves them vulnerable for 1 minute because it takes a minute to recharge. But it's a tremendous blast, and it destroys the Drakh mothership. They get back to Earth, and they're going to now... Franklin has seen what the virus is. It's a nanotech virus, and it thinks it attacks only vital organs like the brain, the heart, the liver, the lungs. It doesn't go into like the gallbladder or the pancreas or any non-essential organ. It only goes into the vital organs. So they figure it's actually a thinking virus. It knows what it's doing, and that's how it's trying to figure out the DNA. Dr. Chambers asks Franklin in the end, before he goes back into the isopod and is ejected back into space to go back to Earth, do you think, now that you know what it is, do you think we can cure it? And he says, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And that's kind of a strange ending. That's the last episode of the series. Unfortunately, there were several others planned which did not get produced, and one of them was going to deal with the Apocalypse Box. There's going to be an episode where the Apocalypse Box takes over Matthew Gideon, and it reveals what its particular agenda is, which we never found out. There was one where the Drakh were going to attack and leave them in almost like a crippled condition, which I think was going to be the cliffhanger for season 1. There was going to be more about the telepath wars, including some revelations about Bester, and maybe about what happened with Lita and Jakar and Garibaldi. That was never made. And there are going to be a number of other episodes, some written by Straczynski, some written by Fiona Avery, who was one of his other writers, and some by Peter David. Those never panned out, and there will never be any more. Galen himself did show up one more time. Peter Woodward played Galen in Babylon 5: The Lost Tales, which was, again, going to be a new series. It was going to be an anthology series, which was going to be like 2 or 3 little stories, each one. Some would deal with the Narns, some would deal with the Centauri, some would deal with the Minbari, some would deal with Sheridan and the Earth Alliance, some would deal with Babylon 5. And only one was made, and that was released direct to DVD, and there are only 2 episodes. One I didn't really care for that much was these priests come aboard, and they're saying that there's some sort of strange happenings going on, and it turns out that something about demons being released out into space. I didn't really like that. I thought it was a little bit too, quite frankly, and not meaning to offend anybody, they were a little too Catholic for me, and I'm Jewish. I don't buy all that, demons and angels stuff. So, I didn't really, like that episode, but I did like the second one, which is about Galen appears again to Sheridan, and he has to escort the new emperor of Centauri Prime, Emperor Vintari, to Centauri Prime, and there's a plot to assassinate him, and he can't understand why. And Galen shows him a future in which Centauri warships are destroying the Earth, and he says that this happened because of Vintari. Vintari wanted to bring glory back to the Empire, and he saw the destroying the Earth as a way of doing this, and that unless he's stopped, this is going to happen. It's not an if. It's not an if. It's a when. It's going to take place. So he plots. Vintari has always wanted to fly a Star Fury, and he plots that if Sheridan will take him into a Star Fury, he's going to assassinate him. He's going to have a quote-unquote accident occur. Well, Sheridan is actually kind of rather appalled by that idea, and he doesn't really want to do it, and he figures out another thing to do. He takes him instead to Minbar so he can learn about the Minbari and the humans and the Narns, and that they're not the enemies of Centauri Prime, and that there are better ways to do things. And this is the first time anybody has actually treated him with respect, Vintari. And because Sheridan does this attack is not going to take place. Well, Galen's upset that he didn't obey what he wanted him to do, but he lauds the fact that he found another way to do it. And that's the last time we see Galen. Anyway, Crusade it's worth checking out. I rewatched the episodes on Daily Motion. Unfortunately, the scans that they got are tilted, and I don't know why, but everything is tilted at sort of a right angle. So you have to kind of look at it like this, but they're still watchable, and I enjoyed most of the ones. Like I said, there were a couple of kind of goofy ones, like Visitors from Down the Street, which don't really advance and that one with the dragons, the Long Road, which I don't, again, really think advanced the plot that much. But it has to be taken in perspective. It didn't advance the plot within these 13 episodes that we got. It might have done so had the larger series been approved, but unfortunately it was canceled by TNT after they had these clashes with Straczynski over mainly creative control, and that was something that he would not allow, and I do not fault him for that, because again, taking a hint from Harlan Ellison, he does not like when people mess with his work, and he wasn't gonna write his own version of Cordwainer Bird as the creator. He just decided, you're not gonna let me do it my way. It's not getting done, period. And I applaud that. So anyway, Crusade is worth watching, and I do recommend watching it if you haven't seen it. It's not great, but it's better than no Babylon 5 at all.